And here they are, Cal Connor on the left with what has become his signature deck of this format, that Snorlax stall, and Vinícius Fernandes with the Giratina V-Star.
Giratina V-Star is just really the sort of list that you love it or you hate it. It has risen in popularity just because it seems to be so well favored against various decks in the metagame, and if you were an early adopter and put in the time and the reps on the list to really study it, it's going to pay off big, and we'll have to see if that continues to be the case, Chip, or if Snorlax has now adapted to its somewhat unfavorable matchup, if Calvin Connor can present a new spin on this matchup.
Yeah, and Cal's kind of been committed to his just straight Snorlax deck. You know, we've seen some players recently popularizing the Pidgeot EX build so that you can use that quick search once per turn. Just go get any one card out of your deck, but it does require a lot of deck space to commit to that. You got to play Pidgey, Rare Candy, Ultra Ball, Pidgeot EX. It requires a lot more space than just the straightforward, you know, we see Cal's list here, 8 Pokemon. The 4 Snorlax, the Rotom, the Pidgeot V, Spiritomb, and Mimikyu being included in his list. No room for any fluff.
Yeah, this is, you find the Pokemon that's going to be best suited for the current board state, going to try to punish your opponent with that Erica's Invitation one ending up in the prizes. That's going to be very important. Rotom V also important to get those resources, but on the other side, Vinícius prizing 2 Jet Energy, going to have the less switch opportunities to get something stranded out of the active.
Yeah, really not ideal prizes for either of these two players. Now, Cal does play the one Hisuian Heavy Ball, so he will have access to that Rotom, but it's going to require him to play, you know, a supporter to find that card. You know, he does play 4 copies of Arven. Here we go. We're kicking this game off. Snorlax in the active for Cal Connor, and it is staring down a Comfey. Your most likely starter with a Lost Zone box deck, of course, 4 Comfey in all of these lists. And Vinny right away playing a Battle VIP Pass and doing what the best players do, check their prize cards, and it's even more important in a matchup like this.
Yeah, the Comfey is really important, especially with double VIP Pass, to start stacking up the Lost Zone. We know that Abyss Seeking is something this deck really likes to do, but because of Snorlax's block ability, using the, you know, the style of Jet Energy or Attach Retreat is going to be off the table, forces you to really strike a balance between, do I want to use my item cards now to fill up my Lost Zone, or do I need to save them to get my key attackers into the active spot when the time is right?
Yeah, so the big cards in this matchup are going to be Vinny's switch cards. He does play 4 switch cart. There's no regular switch. There's no escape rope that I'm seeing at the moment.
Right.
And then he does have 4 copies of Jet Energy as well, which we did see 2 being in the prizes. That is certainly a big deal. He's going to want to make sure that he has full access to those cards, or at least knows what he has available. And right away, we're seeing Giratina V hit the bench. I've talked about this before with players, you know, when trying to help, you know, people kind of learn what to do against a stall deck whenever you're playing against a control deck. And it's an archetype that is trying to win in an unconventional way, right? You're not taking your normal 6 prize cards to win the game. That's the most common win condition in the Pokemon TCG. It's trying to do something a little bit different, trying to force you to deck out, run out of cards. So Snorlax, a deck that's trying to win in an unconventional way, that means that you need to adjust your game plan going in, and you probably need to play in an unconventional way yourself.
Yeah, very true. And when you have to flex into this unfamiliar territory, it comes down to how well you prepped and how familiar you are with the concept in general, right, Chip? And we know that these Lost Zone decks are known for their ability to dig through the deck very quickly, looking for key resources to convert with Mirage Gates and start picking up prizes. But we'll see if Vinny might play something a bit slower, right, as this idea. Comfey being stuck in the active due to block, if he's like waiting and waiting, just going for 1 flower selecting a turn, biding his time until the Mirage Gate's naturally stacked up, and then saving the switch card for the right moment.
Pretty interesting to see Vinny throw that Path to the Peak out immediately. It can be really strong to slow Cal down, but Cal does have the counter stadium in the Temple of Sinnoh immediately, and that is another key card in this matchup. Cal is actually playing 4 copies of Temple of Sinnoh in his deck this weekend, and I have to imagine it is mostly for this matchup, trying to shut down the jet energies that Vinny has on his side of the field, make it so that it's more difficult to get a Pokemon into the active spot. So that's why I'm a little surprised, honestly, to see Vinny throw the Path to the Peak out like that, because countering this Temple of Sinnoh is so vital.
Yeah, probably saying if I get this down early, trying to turn off that Rotom V, starve the resources, allowing him to play the game at his pace, setting up for that Giratina V to come into the active once that switch card is picked up. But Calvin Connor's not going to have any of it. Temple of Sinnoh, and this is the adaptation, right? Oh, the Giratina matchup is bad. Well, I've got all this space in my deck, 8 Pokemon plus a bunch of other cards to help that win condition thrive. It's going to be the Temple of Sinnoh.
And right away, Cal on this first deck search with Battle VIP Pass, checking his prize cards, moving all those Pokemon to the front. And you see the other card he's moved to the front right away, that Hisuian Heavy Ball, because he knows how important it is to get Rotom up and running. And I did see an Arven in his hand.
Beautiful. Arven for the turn. This lets you find the Pokemon tool and an item card. Of course, just picks up that Hisuian Heavy Ball and the item card, the Pokemon tool is the Bravery Charm, giving additional HP to a basic Pokemon, make it much more difficult for those easy prizes to be taken, because Vinny, right, can't play stall versus stall without things like Silene. You've only got a couple Super Rods to put the resources back in, maybe Iono to just draw things out. It's going to be on Vinny to find a way to take some prizes when Calvin Connor's doing his utmost to stop that from happening.
Yeah, and the Giratina V is certainly the most important and best attacker in this matchup. It's got the excellent Shred attack for 3 energy. It deals 160 damage, which is enough to knock out the Snorlax. Of course, the Bravery Charm does make it so that it forces a 2-hit knockout, so Cal can get into some of those penny loops at some point in the game. But he is going to have to do more to try to slow Vinny down. You know, if your opponent is 2-hit KOing your Snorlax every single turn, even with a Bravery Charm, that's not enough time for you to keep the loop up and running that Cal is eventually going to try to get to, which we'll have plenty of time to talk about once we see it come to fruition here in this matchup. But you know, the combination of the Penny to pick up those Pokemon, the Silene, the Team Yell's Cheer to get as many cards back as possible, that Pal Pad. Plenty of time to delve into exactly how this is going to work out. But for now, Cal is grabbing that ever-important Rotom V.
Yeah, this sort of infinite deck idea, was popularized last season with the Mewtwo V Union lists, from Sander Wojcik.
Yes, yes.
And this engine is still in standard, so this is just the new package for it that you can stall out the game, draw some cards with Rotom V. After you use the instant charge, you draw 3 cards, but it ends your turn, and Snorlax is perfectly okay with that trade-off.
We're back over to Vinny's side. Flower selecting. There's a lot of things that you're loving to throw away into the Lost Zone with this deck in this matchup, and one of the things is basic Pokemon. That's a huge win condition potentially for Cal, is to use an Erica's Invitation to catch Vinny with a Manaphy or a Radiant Greninja, something along those lines in his hand, bring it to the active spot, something that cannot attack, cannot do damage, and then force Vinny to burn more resources, exhaust more resources, switch carts, those jet energies in order to get that Pokemon out of the active spot.
Yeah, and Vinny, after looking through the deck, knows what the deal is. There's 2 jet energies in the prizes, Temple of Sinnoh currently in play. It's all up to switch cart to get this Compe out of the active spot when the time is right. Thanks to Corwit's experiment and this flower selecting, it's maybe 1 or 2 more turns away from Giratina V-Star being ready to come into the active spot alongside a Mirage Gate.
So something Vinny could do would be to, if he finds a counter stadium or a switch cart, he can jet energy or attach an energy plus switch cart, use that abyss seeking to try to get more cards into the Lost Zone, but that's not really something he is pressured to do. And the switch cards are the most precious resource in this matchup, the most important thing for Vinny to be tracking. And speaking of those switch cards, that is what Cal is hoping to hit here on the Misfortune Sisters. He gets to look at the top 5 cards of the deck and discard as many item cards as he would like.
Gets rid of a Mirage Gate.
Really nothing too bad to be discarded here. The Mirage Gate, is something that you would like to use probably at some point, but you're going to have time to just manually attach your energy cards.
That's fair.
And Cal recognizing, hey, Counter Catcher and Battle VIP Pass, those are two pretty bad cards. I'm happy to put those back into your deck. I don't have to discard them with the Misfortune Sisters.
Yeah, this is another high-level aspect of the matchup, is making sure that your opponent has bad cards, dead draws. Another Colress's Experiment, however, for Vinny. Roxanne being offered up, finds another Mirage Gate, fortunately. Gets rid of a Water Energy. And I think we saw a Path to the Peak as well, Chip.
Yeah, does need to make sure he keeps those stadium cards hanging around. That Temple of Sinnoh being in play still, of course, a little bit of a nuisance. But yeah, this is pretty fine for Vinny. You know, you can play this matchup pretty slow. Cal, of course, is going to have plenty of time to amass a large hand so that he can have plenty of options, different things to play with.
Yep, and Switch Cart kept 100% of the time here, getting rid of Giratina V-Star into the Lost Zone. And of course, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that first Mirage Gate coming out, hitting 7 cards in the Lost Zone. So we could see Vinny go on the offensive here. And this is what I was talking about. As opposed to, you know, using his Jet Energy, go for the Abyss Seeking, he'd rather play this a little bit slower. And now this turn he can use a Jet Energy or a Switch Cart in order to get an attack off, right? You don't want to be using one of those precious switch cards for a turn that you're not putting damage into play.
Right. Even though the Temple of Sinnoh has taken the Jet Energy off the table, the fact that Vinny was able to start this Comfey in the active has given him this additional drip feed of resources that has ended up in this situation with the double Giratina V set up. Now with Path to the Peak to get rid of the Temple of Sinnoh, there's the Jet Energy attached for turn, bringing Giratina V into the active and set up to begin shredding.
And shred indeed is what we will see. 160 damage laid on this Snorlax. It does only have 150 hit points, but that Bravery Charm allowing it to hang on. Just 40 HP remaining. Now, will Cal Connor respond with the Penny to pick this Pokemon up and reset it? Or is he going to be fine letting this Snorlax go down? That is an interesting question to, you know, kind of see where things go. At some point, Cal does want to allow Vinny to take a prize card. Ultimately, with these control and stall decks, you're fine if your opponent takes 5 prize cards. You just can't let them take the 6th. That's all that matters is, you know, they can take as many knockouts as they want. You just got to kind of figure out where the right time is to allow that to happen, because you want to activate your counter catchers to try to, you know, bring this Comfey back up. I think Cal is really going to be bullying this Comfey through the rest of this game.
It's going to be in the active whether it likes it or not, Chip. And what I like, too, now that Vinny has got the Giratina V in the active, got that first shred off, it is going to be a Penny. Calvin Connor's already calculating, right? How much time do I have to stall out this game? How much pressure does Vinny actually have after expending the Penny? This is already beginning a separate clock, not from the round timer, but the different timing of when do I begin this Penny loop? How quickly can I thin down my deck to really get that up and running?
Now, at some point, Vinny will be able to utilize his Giratina V-Star to one-hit KO Snorlaxes with Bravery Charms, but it's really something you got to be careful about when you put it in play. If Vinny was to utilize Giratina immediately right here, he would almost certainly lose the game. He would just run out of energy cards because Lost Impact forces you to Lost Zone 2 energy attached to your Pokemon every single time you utilize it. And that's a pretty poor trade-off when you're only getting 1 prize card. So at some point in the game, this Giratina V-Star will likely come into play, maybe in combination with like a Boss's Orders on the Rotom V in order to take 2 prize cards. But for now, it's going to be a continued onslaught of Shred.
Pokegear 3.0, looking at the top 7 to find a supporter. Penny was already used. Cal's looking for Silene, wants to get those key cards ready to go. Picks up a Sydney instead.
Yeah, this is a pretty important card as well. A pretty unique effect, letting you view your opponent's hand and then discarding up to 2 in any combination of Pokemon tool cards and special energy. And speaking of which, and stadium cards as well, let's not forget that gets thrown into the mix. Speaking of which, though, Vinny having to discard one of his Jet Energy. That's actually his last one available to him right now, the other 2 being in the prizes.
So the potential to bump the Temple of Sinnoh to get another Pokemon into the active, slowly shrinking down. And now Calvin Connor also has that hand knowledge. I see you've got 2 switch cards there, my friend. Now I can begin to adapt and adjust my game plan around that. If there is potentially an Iono to shuffle those back into the deck, just to deny those switch cards, make them additional prey for Misfortune Sisters, then Vinny ends up in a weird situation of something stranded in the active and no way to move it, and that's the deck out scenario that Cal wants.
Exactly what Cal is hoping for. He's going to end this turn, as he usually does, with the Rotom V, drawing 3 additional cards. Vinny, not being disrupted last turn, is going to just continue to attack. And we're going to get to a point in this game where it's going to be pretty straightforward what Vinny's doing every single turn. Draw and attack. Now, Cal did gain the hand knowledge from Vinny, saw that basic Radiant Greninja in his hand, and is going to combo that with the Erica's Invitation on the following turn. This was his ideal opportunity to bring that Pokemon down and bring it into the active spot.
Especially after getting rid of that Jet Energy with the Sydney, having the Temple of Sinnoh sticking in play for so long. After seeing the hand, is confident this is the right time to send out that invitation, and Radiant Greninja is now in the active spot. There is 3 Water Energy in this deck, Chip, but that Radiant Greninja is not going to be doing anything anytime soon.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be so sure. There's a basic Water Energy in the hand, and, Mirage Gate could, lead us to some Moonlight Shurikens to take multiple prize cards. That is something that Vinny could go for. That is a pretty extensive use of his resources, however. We'll see if he does choose to go that route, and with this Super Rod being played, I think there's a shot we're going to see it.
Let me see. The hand has gotten so big, I'm losing track. That's Mirage Gate number 3. If I'm not mistaken.
And we do see the 2 energy cards going onto the active spot. Vinny
well,
does
I'll
have
be
2 Super Rod available to him. And this is really nice for Vinny because it's going to take 2 Snorlax out of play. He's going to take 2 prize cards, but almost more importantly, he's getting rid of 2 Bravery Charms. If he can limit those, I mean, they're a lot harder to get back than something like the Snorlax. You can put Snorlax back into the deck as Cal pretty easily with something like Super Rod, with something like the Team Yell's Cheer, and then get them right back with the Nest Balls that he's going to have access to. But with those 2 Bravery Charms going down...
Yeah, was this a misstep from Calvin Connor going for the Erica's Invitation? Maybe pulling the trigger on that a little bit too soon? Well, I didn't think the Radiant Greninja was going to pull it off either.
Yeah, the Radiant Greninja was able to get there. I mean, Cal did have perfect knowledge of Vinny's hand, right? So he had to have known that it was pretty possible, and he has definitely played this matchup a lot. So I have to assume Cal is aware that that was a play that Vinny could have gone for. But for now, it doesn't matter that you lose 2 Bravery Charm necessarily. You can get them back with something like the Silene later on, but he does still have the 1 more Bravery Charm, which we see attached now to the active Snorlax, but also a luxurious cape to boost the HP of another additional Snorlax later on. And, this play from Cal, by bringing up this Greninja, allowing Vinny to go for the 2 prize cards, it does force a pretty large expenditure of resources, right? Vinny had to use the Super Rod, had to use a Mirage Gate, and that's really what these matchups come down to. It is a true resource war, and both players being aware of what the other one has access to.
Yeah, and maybe that is Cal Connor just kind of ripping off the Band-Aid there. Like, this Moonlight Shuriken is going to happen eventually. The longer I wait, the more likely it becomes. I'm going to give the two prizes now, get those, energies discarded to the discard pile due to Moonlight Shuriken's effect, and now you're on a Super Rod to get those back if you want to try again.
So Vinny here has the Giratina V-Star, and he has Boss's orders, so, he could go aggressive after the Rotom V on Cal's bench. I don't really expect to see that just yet. We also could see a world where Boss's orders targeted the Snorlax, but no, it will be the Rotom V. This does, very importantly, send the Snorlax to the bench, so that block ability no longer active. That means the Radiant Greninja can retreat, and it is going to be Giratina V-Star. We will see the Lost Impact.
Very impressive, Chip. I guess after the Moonlight Shuriken, Vinny is, smelling the blood in the water, is going to go aggressive here to capitalize on this momentum.
Yeah.
Goes for that Lost Impact to take 2 more prizes. But you said it first, Chip. It only matters if Cal Connor doesn't allow him to take those final prizes.
Yeah.
After weathering this brutal onslaught with Counter Catcher to bring Radiant Greninja back into the active, no energy attached to it, can this Snorlax with Bravery Charm hold on for the rest of the game? Palpad finds Misfortune Sisters and Arven to head back into the deck. Misfortune Sisters trying to find those switch cards to counter those. Arven going to try to find an additional luxurious cape, as you mentioned, potentially to bolster the HP of this final Snorlax.
Yeah, I think what Cal needs to do here is buy time. So we're probably going to see him go for an Iono, try to slow Vinny down, comboing the Iono with the Counter Catcher, bringing the Greninja into the active spot. This this Iono is going to leave Vinny with just 2 cards. So it's going to give Cal some time to reestablish, build his hand back up, and find more things to work with, because the game is, pretty much set on the board for Vinícius at this point. He needs to Lost Impact one more time, and then Star Requiem, use that V-Star power one more time. That's 2 more prize cards. That wins the game for Vinny. So Cal needs to, by the time, get to a point where he can reestablish, and that's exactly what has happened. Vinny can only draw a card and pass.
And earlier, we kind of saw this same idea, Chip, but Comfey was in the active. Having that extra flower selecting was so important, not only to see an additional card every turn, but to get rid of your dead draws. Silene now coming through, double hedge.
Very nice. That's going to allow Cal to choose 2 cards from his discard pile, placing them on top of the deck in whichever order. So he's going to guaranteed be able to draw them. Temple of Sinnoh and Sydney being levied right away, deciding which route he wants to go, though. And this is what the eventual loop is going to come down to. This is how Cal prevents himself from decking out. Now, he does have a Pidgeot V. That's a pretty easy way to ensure that you don't deck out as well. But the combination of Silene plus Palpad plus Team Yell's Cheer, the Team Yell's Cheer puts back the Silene. Silene can get you back any cards. And then if that all fails, you can use Palpad to put back both Silene and the Team Yell's Cheer at the same time.
Gotcha. So once that loop is up and running, you just take the card that your opponent hates most, and you keep playing it over and over again. And it's all down to, again, these switch cards. Temple of Sinnoh's just been hanging out in play. Vinny running very low on energy right now after using that Lost Impact to KO the Rotom V. Sent 2 energy to the Lost Zone. Is now up to 9. Just needs to find 1 more Comfey into the active spot, right, to get that Star Requiem as the final threat.
Now, Vinny does play 2 Boss's Orders. We have seen 1 hit the discard pile already. Now, Cal has put Rotom V in play yet again. That does leave an opening for Vinny
scary
to close out the game, but it's very, very unlikely at this point that Vinny would have all the pieces necessary. Boss's Orders plus an energy card or a cult, he needs 1 more card in the Lost Zone as well. He's up to 9 at this point, and we're going to see the Sydney. Cal's going to get that hand knowledge. There's the boss. There is the stadium as well, and the stadium is going to be discarded from the effect of Sydney.
And now that Cal Connor looks at the hand, sees the boss's orders, after putting down the Rotom V, wanting to see, I don't think this is likely, I need the Rotom V because I still need to thin down this deck so much. Right now, what's the option? Penny has to come through to get this Rotom V out of play before Vinny can get this Radiant Greninja out of the active spot.
At some point, yes, but Cal should know that he doesn't really have too much to worry about at this moment. There's not really 1 card that Vinny can top deck that gives him the instant win, right? Maybe an Escape Rope, something like that. We know Vinny doesn't play Escape Rope, but Cal might think that there's an Escape Rope. If Vinny top decked an Escape Rope, he could Flower Selecting into a Switch card, into Boss, into an Energy, something like that to try to win the game. But it's pretty unlikely that Vinny would find any 1 card to get him the win based on the other cards that Cal saw from the Sydney.
Okay, I see. So Arvin grabs for a Seal Stone. Another big reason to put the Rotom V in play so that it can carry that powerful tool. Use Star Alchemy. Find that additional missing card. You need to put the, put the rest of your turn together. And is this going to be a resource that Calvin sits on right now, or is there a card that he wants immediately that you can envision, Chip?
You're probably going to sit on it for just a moment, and pretty soon he's going to want to start playing the Misfortune Sisters, which he was fortunate enough to draw into from this Rotom Instant Charge. While Vinny has a very low amount of cards in hand, he's going to want to try to get rid of those switch cards. But Vinny finding a switch card at nearly the perfect time, this Flower Selecting does hit a Super Rod and a Colress Experiment. 2 pretty good cards. Now, this is going to put Vinny up to 10 cards in the Lost Zone after this Flower Selecting. So that means that a Star Requiem is online. The path is there for Vinny to just close out the game. But he doesn't quite have everything. If he has a Mirage Gate, he could win the game right now. Boss's Orders brings up the Rotom. Mirage Gate putting the energy on the Comfey to retreat it into the Star Requiem. But, we haven't seen the game-winning play just yet, so I don't think Vinny has it.
Yeah, I think that Vinny is on 1 copy of Mirage Gate left, if my count is right, Chip.
Yeah, I think so. He's played 2. 1 got Lost Zoned, right? Or maybe, no, 1 got discarded from the Misfortune Sisters, so there's 3 in the discard pile.
And so this is the race of Vinny gets Mirage
Yeah.
Gate. Penny
As
immediately
quickly as he could possibly
scooped
do
up
it.
frame 1, Rotom V. Counter Catcher brings that Radiant Greninja back into the active spot, trying to buy even more time. So now, at the very least, no 2 prize Pokemon in play. Didn't even use the Forest Seal Stone, right?
Oh, and the next card for Vinny is an energy card. So he was 1 card away from just winning the game instantly because he could have bossed up the Rotom, attached the energy card to the Comfey, retreated, used the Star Requiem, and won the game. Literally 1 card away from Vinny just winning this game number 1, and he doesn't find it.
And now this is pretty awkward, as you mentioned, Chip, right? Where the Giratina V, using the Lost Impact, Lost Zoning energy is pretty awkward now. After that Super Rod, Vinny still needs to draw into those energies that were shuffled into the deck because the Giratina V does have Shred, that great attack that allows you to just consistently threaten the Snorlax that's in the active spot, but needs to get this Radiant Greninja out of the active and needs to find 1 more energy for the Giratina V to do that.
And now we're going to see the Misfortune Sisters Onslaught. 5 cards from the top of
Where's
Vinny's
that Mirage
deck.
Gate?
And there's
The
a
switch
switch
card.
card.
Oof.
The immediate discard from Cal Connor.
And I think that means that Vinny's on 1 more switch card?
I think that is right. 1 switch card remaining. Cal's going to get a count right now. We see 2 right there. 1 was played last turn, of course. Ooh, there are 2 switch card remaining, actually. So that is pretty nice for Vinny. Let's see. 1 Jet Energy in the discard pile. So there's still a few of those remaining. We know there were a couple prized, but now Vinny, I think, has taken both of them out of his prize cards.
And so potentially in the hand and shuffled back in from the Iono. I did see 1 in the hand there, Chip. And this resource battle is getting pretty down to the wire. Path to the Peak, bumps Temple of Sinnoh. That means the Jet Energy will be employed to bring Giratina V-Star into the active. Star Requiem is online. Don't have to worry about this Bravery Charm on the Snorlax. Just take prize number 5.
It could be the Lost Impact as well, just Lost Zoning the Jet Energy here and then the Grass Energy here. We'll see which route Vinny decides to go for. It will be the Star Requiem. 1 prize card remaining. Can Cal Connor fight back in this spot? I already see Counter Catcher. You know that's going to be one of his first cards played.
Counter Catcher, Radiant Greninja getting bullied. Back into the active once more. Vinny has a couple more shots to get this Radiant Greninja out of the active spot. Cal Connor playing the Temple of Sinnoh, trying to make Jet Energy not work.
And you have to think, Vinny, with how many turns are remaining here with just 1 prize card needed. Oh, that's pretty huge. Hitting the Giacomo in order to Lost Zone the energy. That would have been, or sorry, to discard the energy. That would have been a decent argument to actually go for the Lost Impact last turn. Vinny here does find the Colress. We'll be able to look at the top 5. Does he find a switch cart? No switch cart found from these 5 cards.
Yeah, just a Counter Catcher. Not going to be able to do anything with that. Nest Ball, not doing much either from this point. Don't want to put another basic Pokemon in play that just gets stranded in the active. Could be a good way to thin.
Yeah, for Vinny, I think the 2 Pokemon to put down would probably just be the 2 cards to put down would just be the 2 Pokemon. There, the basic Pokemon, the Comfey and the Giratina V. Instead, we'll just lose the Counter Catcher, decides to hang on to the Comfey. Maybe thinking that's not too bad if that gets Erica's invitation out. Of course, that Greninja already being in play is all Cal really wants to be picking on. And look at that, so many energy cards in the deck. 2 switch card in there as well. 1 Jet Energy I see.
No
Mirage
path.
Gate. Yeah, no path remaining. There's 4 path in this list.
And yeah, Vinny had opened up the game with that path initially, trying to shut off Cal Connor's engine with the early Rotom V, and immediately had gotten that bump by Temple of Sinnoh.
And all 4 path are in the discard pile. So those Jet Energy are not out to get a Giratina V-Star into the active spot. So Vinny needs to, at some point, draw into a switch cart and an energy card so that he can Lost Impact for the game. And Cal Connor is going to do everything he can to make sure that that does not happen.
So that's the win con, folks. It is the Misfortune
it could still
Sisters.
happen here. 2 cards from Radiant Greninja. There's an energy card, but no switch cart. And the longer those switch carts remain in the deck, the higher chance for Cal Connor to hit them on the Misfortune Sisters.
Pidgeot V attaching Forest Seal Stone has access to Star Alchemy as well. Pal Pad to put those key supporters back in the deck. Going to be Misfortune Sisters and a Penny being eyeballed. Iono as well. Great choice.
You could grab the Silene, something along those lines, but it will be that Misfortune Sisters, and I think we'll see that V-Star marker flipped pretty soon to just go get the Misfortune Sisters. Cal recognizing the situation. He needs to get rid of those switch carts But not doing it just yet. Maybe he has another plan up his sleeve.
Yeah, and this is a game of chicken at this point. How long do you want to wait? Do I want to be aggressive with finding these Misfortune Sisters and cycling them to get rid of the switch cards? That's the win condition. That's how Cal Connor wins. I would love for him to go for that right now.
And Cal does have a Misfortune Sisters in the hand already, so not needing to grab one out of the deck.
Okay.
So he can utilize that here if he wants to. Is actually going to choose to go for the Iono, knowing that Vinny has used a couple of turns to amass a decent amount of cards in hand, and off of just this one card, decent chance that he's not going to be able to find the win.
And with the one card, especially, Comfey's not in the active, so no flower selecting.
Right.
With the odds of that one card being an energy to even activate Radiant Greninja, very low. I think Vinny's already used up all the Chorus's experiments as well.
Yeah, I think there's one in the prize cards still. I think that might be what his last prize is. And so Cal does use that V-Star power, grabbing a Pokemon out, immediately uses the Vanishing Wings of the Pidgeot V to place it back into the deck. Doesn't want to give Vinny the boss's orders, attach, retreat, win condition potentially. Boss's orders plus Mirage Gate, I suppose.
Yeah, so Calvin Connor, not only do you need to play your own deck in this matchup, you need to know your opponent's deck inside and out as you're forcing them to play through their whole list. Misfortune Sisters,
this
big.
is huge.
5 cards from the top.
How many switch cards? No switch cards.
Oh.
0 switch cards. Where are the switch cards, Skarzig?
They are hiding. I can't believe this. They're shuffled in there somewhere. And after the Misfortune Sisters, the deck is shuffled one more time. Vinny gets another couple turns to potentially draw into the switch card to bring this Giratina V-Star into the active spot. Still needs 1 energy to be found.
Yep. It's a
to
2-card
use that
combo
lost
here
impact
to win the game. Draw for turn on Vinny's side. Just a pass once again. Cal probably going to slam Misfortune Sisters one more time. Let's spin that wheel. Can we find some switch cards?
I'm holding my breath right now.
No switch cards again! Cal can't believe it.
Vinny is hanging on by a thread. And all those energies that were at the top of the deck get shuffled back in. So
I think Vinny did hit a switch card in his hand currently, so he's waiting for a game-winning draw.
That deck is pretty thin. That was 3 energy off the top of that from the Misfortune Sisters, now shuffled into the deck.
And Cal really having to take a moment and rethink this position, try to figure out what to do. All he can afford is a pass. Vinny, the same on his end.
The pressure of every single draw for Cal Connor that the opponent might have. Arvin looking through the deck now. Is there any item or tool that's important from here? Pokegear,
yeah,
right?
Pokegear just to find supporters here moving forward. Cal does eventually need to try to get his loop going, use that Team Yell's cheer in order to put back maybe some of these Misfortune Sisters, get that Silene back, Silene to get back a eventual Pal Pad as well. He wants to have unlimited access to these resources, but you have to favor Vinny here in this position. He's really just waiting for the one-card draw.
And Cal Connor, right, if he whiffs on Misfortune Sisters, can maybe go for Iono.
Oh, does Vinny have it? He picks his hand up. He's thinking, no, just a pass once again.
Oh, and Calvin drew into the Misfortune Sisters, but didn't play it.
Yeah, holding off. I think he's assuming there's a decent shot that Vinny actually just has a switch card in the hand. That's something he's got to be thinking about. He's only seen 2 switching cards of some sort. They're both in the discard pile. So he's assuming that Vinny has those cards in hand. Maybe Cal here waiting to draw into an Iono, but he actually has Iono in the hand. Here we go, switch card into the Comfey. Let's see it, 2 cards. There's the energy card. Does he have the other switch card? I think he must.
Wow, there it is. The double switch card, the energy found, and Vinny able to take the final prize.
Yeah, I wonder if Cal should have made the read that Vinny had the switch cards in his hand because he played 2 Misfortune Sisters, didn't see a single one. He maybe needed to assume that Vinny just had them in hand and maybe should have gone with the Iono. The problem with going for Iono from that position as Cal is that he's just going to have to try to reestablish his board. He's going to be relying on one single draw every single turn.
Exactly, without the Rotom V to fill up those resources, and the loop just was not properly established, right, Chip? Vinny had this key moment of finding the Moonlight Shuriken, immediately capping that off with the Giratina V-Star, taking so many prizes all at once and just building up this snowball of pressure and momentum. And Calvin just did not have enough time in the early parts of the game to thin through the deck the way he liked.
Yeah, what an incredible game. I mean, you can see that this matchup, while Vinny did come out on top, it is nowhere near as one-sided as I think many people would give it credit for. Just imagine if Cal, off either of those two Misfortune sisters, had been more fortunate, had discarded those switch cards. I mean, Vinny would have been stuck in the active with the Greninja and no real plays to get out of that situation.
And now in this long best of 3, 17 minutes back on the clock in game number 2, Calvin Connor's got his back against the wall. Starting Pidgeot V in the active spot and Rotom V once more in the prizes.
Yeah, that's pretty tough. Once again, a Jet Energy on Vinny's side. Boss's Orders, honestly, the bigger card to see in the prize cards here. We saw that Vinny needed both Boss's Orders to really give him, you know, he had the 2 Boss's Orders as potential win cons. Now he's only
thinking about it, you have the turn 1 path to the peak.
Once again, trying to shut down Cal's setup. Cal right away, drawing that Hisuian Heavy Ball. That will be fortunate, and also countering the Stadium immediately.
Yeah, this is exactly what we saw in game number 1, right? The Temple of Sinnoh coming through, Rotom V found. Now more draw can be had thanks to Instant Charge, Snorlax, and of course, the Bravery Charm needs to be found. But this is already, even though Calvin has a very similar turn 1 to what he had in game 1, Vinny's starting with Giratina V in the active spot. There's going to be less ability to fill the Lost Zone with no Comfey. It's just going to be Abyss Seeking for now.
This is honestly an even better start for Vinny, right? Using that Abyss Seeking right away, it gets you more cards in the Lost Zone than one Comfey does every single turn,
Very true.
Because if you just start the Comfey, you're obviously not going to bench multiple. You're just going to get one card in the Lost Zone every single turn. But if you start the Giratina V, you can freely go for that Abyss Seeking turn after turn. And this is the worst, you know, probably situation for Cal, to be honest, to see this be Vinny's one starter.
Yeah, and Vinny could just keep this one Giratina V as the only Pokemon in play. You don't have to worry about Snorlax attacking into you. Calvin Connor already, you know, spiraling, looking at the clock, trying to evaluate the situation. How quickly can I play this? How quickly can I thin my hand down, my deck down? Rotom V on the bench will hopefully contribute large amounts to that, but it's looking pretty rough.
Yeah, and you do bring up the clock, Skarzig, which is an excellent point, because that is a huge part about playing Snorlax in tournament play. You know, we're playing Swiss best of 3, so that means in order to, you know, win a set, you've got to win 2 games. And Snorlax, we saw from that first game, it took 35 minutes. We've got 15 minutes left on the clock. Not going to be enough time to close out this game number 2. Really, Vinny doesn't really need to feel pressured to do much of anything in this game. He can just play his game, you know, draw, pass, draw, pass. And honestly, if he just did that, there's probably not enough time for Cal to deck Vinny out.
The early pressure, right, of starting the Giratina V, combined with, you know, the onus on Calvin Connor to go for blind, potentially, Erica's invitation to try to snag something into the active spot just to keep alive from this point is going to be pretty rough, because it takes so long for Calvin Connor's win condition to truly happen. And being at 10-1-1 means that he's piloted against several Giratina Vs, I imagine, very successfully. And it's just at this moment, Vinny had what it took in that final game. Because as we said, Calvin Connor went for the Erica's invitation in game 1, brought the Radiant Greninja up to the active after seeing the Mirage Gate, and I guess just wanted to rip off that Band-Aid, but gave up too many early prizes and too much early pressure before the deck was properly thinned.
Yeah, I'm honestly a little surprised to see that Vinny put down a second Giratina. He did that in game number 1 as well, which I was also a little surprised by. I didn't really say anything about it because I wanted to see what his game plan was. But yeah, the 2 Giratina V is interesting. It does just give your opponent another counter catcher target, potentially. You know, they can counter catcher around where your energy are being placed.
Yeah, and now you have to play, you know, splitsies by distributing the energy so that you have 2 attackers rather than just selfishly attaching everything to one.
Yeah, and I guess the thinking is that Vinny doesn't really care if Cal counter catchers up a Giratina V. You know, worst case scenario, you can just go attach Abyss Seeking, right, and continue to draw through the deck. And ooh, a pretty big Avery here, getting rid of 1 Snorlax at least. It looks like it will be 2 discarded. Vinny drawing 3 cards.
Yeah, Calvin Connor did pick up that Erica's invitation, and this is going to come down to, you know, potentially a read of, okay, do you have those basic Pokemon? Abyss Seeking going to come through? And you can see Cal Connor's just immediately drawing card, thinking about his turn before this big Abyss Seeking fully resolves,
Yep.
because the time pressure is now on him. Here's the Erica's Invitation.
All right, this could be
Is he
big.
rewarded?
They're seeing this hand, and there is one
One
Pokemon in there.
Cramorant.
The Cramorant. And that is not the best Pokemon to hit, but it is better to be in the active than a Giratina V. Now, Cramorant can just freely use that Spit Innocently attack every single turn. Its Lost Provisions being activated that powerful ability thanks to there being 4 cards in the Lost Zone. So Cramorant, honestly, not too bad in this matchup. It is definitely less powerful, though, than Giratina V.
Vinny going for the Pokegear now, looking for Colress's Experiment, maybe that other boss's orders, trying to set up some big plays, especially with Rotom V and Pidgeot V in play. Gives him huge opportunities to take multiple prizes.
And we'll find that Colress is going to continue to try to fuel the Lost Zone. Gets to the point where we can see some Mirage Gates coming down. Star Requiem can become a threat as well. And it is interesting because do you really want to burn a Switch Cart or a Jet Energy in order to, get the Cramorant out of the active whenever it's something that is able to attack every single turn? It might be more worthwhile to hang on to those cards until your opponent is, bringing something like a Greninja or a Comfey to the active.
Yeah, I think that that's the key, just to rely on the Cramorant. Time is on your side. You got the win in game 1. I think the Cramorant could certainly just start swinging. The problem here, too, of course, is Pidgeot V's Vanishing Wings. You can drop some damage on it and then have that nullified.
Yeah, it does have to be on the bench, however, so that is something to think about. And Vinny is actually going to burn an energy card here, Attach Retreat. That's not too bad. He does still have a Super Rod. Now, one did get discarded from the early Misfortune Sisters, but does still have one remaining.
Switch Cart and Mirage Gate both offered up from the Abyss Seeking, and the Mirage Gate is sent to the Lost Zone. We've got 2 gates in the Lost Zone. Trying to keep track here. A lot of Switch Carts in the hand. The hand is absolutely massive for Vinny. Cal Connor just drawing cards with Rotom V, diligently sticking to his game plan, trying to find the right moment to strand something important in the active spot. Temple of Sinnoh has been hanging out this whole time.
Yeah, uses that Vanishing Wings to throw the Pidgeot back in there. Boss's Orders, why wait for your opponent to take a prize card when Boss's Orders can just actively and aggressively gust a Pokemon into the active spot?
Forest Seal Stone still an option for Cal Connor. Vinny picking up the 3rd Mirage Gate. Now with 8 cards in the Lost Zone, can turn on these Giratina Vs so they become true threats. But at least for now, Cramorant can still put down some pressure and some damage on the Snorlax in the active.
Yeah, is it time to go with the Shred? It would take a knockout here because there is no Bravery Charm on this active Snorlax, whereas Spit Innocently would just be hitting for 110, so could be worth it to go on the aggressive here if it means you're taking a prize card. And I think that is
has
what
the
we're gonna
Pass to the
see.
Peak to bump the Temple of Sinnoh so that the Jet Energy attachment brings this Giratina V into the active spot. This saves you a Switch Cart, which is great. And there's the Shred to take 1 prize versus that Snorlax. Calvin Connor promotes the 2nd one. 2 were sent to the discard pile thanks to that early Avery. It's going to be Super Rod here, bringing those Snorlaxes back into the deck.
Yeah, all 3 going back. Of course, 2 discarded from the early Avery. Does need to have a replacement Snorlax if he anticipates this active one going down. He either needs to buff its HP with a tool card or, have another one to replace it and be okay with this one being KO'd. He also needs to find a counter stadium to get rid of the pesky Path to the Peak so that he can activate his Rotom ability. And sure enough, that Temple of Sinnoh comes into play.
Yeah, wonderfully timed. I don't think Cal Connors had to tolerate a turn under Path to the Peak at all this set. Has all the Temple of Sinnohs. Bravery Charm now attached to the Snorlax, and Cramorant being brought into the active with Counter Catcher.
And the Arven being found from the Pokegear. He's going to play it right away, probably grabbing a Nest Ball to get another Snorlax set up. And a Bravery Charm for the new one as well.
Yeah, beautifully done. Nice shortcut here as well. 8 minutes now on the clock, folks. If this time ticks all the way down, just because of the way the best of 3 rules do work, Vinny will be declared the winner, but Calvin Connor's still going to try and get this deck thinned down thanks to Rotom V, get that loop started, and just get Vinny to deck out.
And right away to the front of this hand, Vinny brings his Boss's Orders and Giratina V-Star. Are we going to see him go aggressive after the Rotom V on the bench? Pull that to the active spot, take 2 prize cards. Let's see if that is the route he wants to go right away here.
Yeah, but taking 6 prizes as the main win condition of Pokemon, it's difficult for Cal Connor to stop that from just naturally occurring as time passes. As long as you have enough Pokemon with consistent enough damage output, you know that your opponent will eventually win the game. The idea is to really weather the storm and completely starve them out of resources.
So the attach retreat from the Cramorant. We're going to see the 2 prize cards here, and it is important for Vinny to try to take 2 prize cards at some point off this Rotom. The longer he waits, the more likely it is that Cal Connor can just use Penny to pick that Rotom up. And actually, Vinny does have Super Rod and Boss's Orders and an Energy in his remaining 3 prize cards.
Yeah, so after taking those 2, he is set up for victory, but Pidgeot V going to re-enter play with the Forest Seal Stone. This was brought into the deck once more with Vanishing Wings, but going to use Star Alchemy immediately to find Sydney.
Yeah, and uses that Sydney. Going to view Vinny's hand, is able to discard up to 2 in any combination of tools, special energy, and stadiums, and it looks like a pair of jet energy going down most likely.
Yeah, sees that there's no Path to the Peak, but still wants to get rid of those jet energies right now. And then, of course, is going to look and see all the switch cards, sees the boss's orders.
All 4 of them. All 4 switch cards in Vinny's hand currently.
Unbelievable. Yeah, so nothing is getting shredded into the active here until an Iono is played, and Cal Connor sees the writing on the wall. How can he adapt to this chip? Is there any hope?
It's definitely looking bleak at this point. Vinny might just win this game outright, and we might not have to worry about the whole, winning game 1, and it's a 1-0 victory.
Yeah, but after Sydney reads the hand, Countercatcher brings up the Cramorant. Vinny can just use a switch card here, bring Giratina V into the active spot. There is 10 cards in the Lost Zone. Star Requiem might be the option. There needs to be 1 more energy attachment somewhere to make Lost Impact online for the final prize, potentially.
Yeah, with 3 prizes remaining, Vinny has to make sure he levels his resources really wisely here. Star Requiem for 1 and then Lost Impact twice. And I think he has exactly enough resources to make that exact play happen. For now, though, he'll try to sneak in a KO with this Cramorant where he can, and this does force Cal's hand a bit. It forces him to play Penny more than likely, and means that he's not going to be able to play something else. But instead it will be the Arven
instead.
Yeah, maybe that means that there's an incoming switch cart in Cal's hand currently. Could be the case.
Yeah, just thinning out the Forest Seal Stone, picks up a Nest Ball, needs to find another basic Pokemon.
And we'll play the Nest Ball right away, just getting another Snorlax to replace this one if it were to go down.
And so there's 3 Pokemon in play, 3 prizes remaining for Vinny. This is, he sees the objectives all laid out before him with 3 Bravery Charms. These are pretty respectable, but that's just, Cramorant hits twice, hits twice, hits twice. Is that going to be enough time?
Vinny's going to draw for turn. Does have an energy card. Can load up 1 more attachment to this Giratina V-Star. And once again, we'll just spit innocently onto the Snorlax. Cal has a Penny in hand. Already bringing up a counter catcher. And he's going to bring up this Giratina V.
Yeah, and
this is what I was kind of meaning.
Chip.
Yeah. Now, this is going to be, I think, fine for Vinny. We know he has a million switch carts in his hand. And that's exactly what we're going to see here. But Cal is forcing him to expend those resources.
Ooh, and opts for the Giratina V-Star. Now with the additional energies in play, goes for Lost Impact.
It's going to be 1 prize card drawn here. Does hit the energy. And really 2 out of 3 prize cards there for Vinny were pretty good. The boss, not super useful now at this point, I would say. But either Super Rod or the basic energy is pretty good. Cal, right away, uses that boss. Passes back over to Vinny.
Yeah, just right now expending resources. It looks like Cal Connor is envisioning, I'm going to go down to you having 1 prize card remaining, go for the Iono to 1 strategy.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're going to have to see, but I think Vinny is in a decent shot to just close this one out here. Cal having to go for a counter catcher plus a Iono play almost definitely does hit the Iono from this Pokegear 3.0.
That is very fortunate. Vinny with a massive hand. We know that all the switch cards are in hand. And especially after drawing that energy from the prize cards, that's going to be shuffled down to the bottom of the deck.
Yeah, and after playing Sydney as well, Cal is totally aware of what Vinny has access to in this hand. So Iono to 1 is going to be the play. And it's going to be the waiting game here. I think Cal probably knows the situation, knows that he's unlikely to win this game. regardless of time. You know, Vinny may just win the game naturally, but that's a pretty good draw, honestly, finding that Temple of Sinnoh. That does limit Vinny's outs to just close out the game. Colress's experiment, huge find.
Oh my goodness, 5 cards. Calvin was really hoping to have more time than this to build up a hand, to build up the resources, but a Colress off the top really negates the Iono, and plenty of energy is to be had.
Yeah, and we do know that all those switch cards are on the bottom of the deck, so Vinny is not going to find them. So actually even just choosing to go for the pass, not even worried about Abyss Seeking. 5 cards from the top from Misfortune Sisters. Mirage Kate being discarded, but no switch cards. And honestly, this is pretty solid for Vinny because it shuffles the deck. Now those switch cards are going to be live potential draws for the game winner. That's all Vinny needs here to close this out. Let's see if he can get it. 1 card to draw. Is it a switch card? Yes, it is!
Right off the top, bringing the Giratina V-Star into the active, and that is 2-0 versus Snorlax Stall.
Wow, what a game, what a set. Super well played from Vinny Fernandes, traveling to this event all the way from Brazil, and he took down, you know, the Snorlax poster child, you know, the guy who has just been dominating tournaments with this deck. Now, Cal is far from eliminated from Top Cut at this point. That is just his second loss of the tournament now. So he's sitting at a 10-2-1 record. So he's got 2 rounds remaining to try to get 2 wins. But Vinny, on the other side of the table, has 2 rounds remaining to try to just get 1 single win to lock up a top 8 spot.
Right. And Chip, that's a favored matchup. We saw Vinny have to fight tooth and nail to find those wins. Calvin Connor navigated this matchup perfectly. Incredibly beautiful timing on the Temples of Sinnoh, but it just wasn't enough. The Rotom Vs were such a liability in the early parts of the game. Vinny going for these aggressive lines with the boss's orders to get early prizes and just keep that pressure up and running.
Yeah, really incredible play here. The game 1 was really the close one. I think Vinny did kind of run away with things in game number 2, regardless of how much time was going to be left. I think Vinny, as we did see, he does eventually win there. You know, that was going to be a tough one for Cal to win. Cal's best chance to get a win here was to win that game number 1, and he does come up just short. Maybe a little bit unfortunate with the Misfortune Sisters not finding those switch cards.
That is so true in game number 1.
That was huge, yeah.
And then, of course, Vinny, after getting Iono to 1, pulls the Colress's experiment. Calvin
making it
desperately
look easy.
using the Misfortune, trying to get rid of those switch cards, and then immediately 1 off the top. He was certainly destined to win this one, apparently.
Yeah, absolutely incredible play. Vinny just really well mapping out his prize cards, and that's something that's really important just in Pokemon in general, but especially in those control and stall matchups. You've got to map out your 6 prizes and know exactly where each of those are coming.
And I think it's a great showcase of how the game can be played in a complete